Hey everyone, WWDC is just around the corner. It's Monday, June 6, 2015, so I want to talk with you about WWDC 2015 and what we can expect to see when it comes around next Monday. This is Consumerality channel where I want to talk tech with you. So without further ado, let's talk tech, let's talk WWDC 2015. And hello everyone, once again my name is Connor Perez and this is the Consumerality YouTube channel. This is my first YouTube video that I've made in 4 years. I used to make these videos back when I was in middle school. Now I've graduated high school. I'm a little bit older, I think a little bit more capable of doing these, although I'm really stressed out about this, and I've recorded this a few times and I've rehearsed it a few other times and I have notes. So let's hope this goes well. Okay, well actually, let's try another take, because the take where I was just talking, I talked for 7 minutes about iOS 9, which is not something I wanted to do, because the point of talking about iOS 9 is to say that there aren't going to be a lot of feature additions. So let's hope I can talk about that in under 7 minutes this time. In iOS 9, they're going to be focusing on stability. In the recent past, the past 2 years, ever since iOS 7, Apple has been criticized for having an OS prone to crashing and bugs, and essentially this is not really what people expect from iOS versions 1 through 6, and afterward it's been a little rocky. So Apple's going to focus on stability in this update and not new feature additions. But that's not to say there's going to be no new feature additions. They're working on a feature called Proactive, and it's going to be the hub of everything you do on your iPhone. It's going to have your contacts, your calendar, it's going to have maps, it's going to be integrated with Siri, and really replace Spotlight, although Spotlight might not go away and still might be when you swipe up. This is going to be, according to 9to5Mac at least, when you swipe over to the left, and it's going to really give you the ability to compete with Google Now, because Google Now has taken off and Google has really found success in the service that connects people to their phone and their boarding passes and, flight information, traffic information, and that's something that Apple hasn't been able to do with its multiple services in Siri and a notification center. So hopefully with Proactive, Apple at least hopes they're going to be able to combine all of that and give a better personal feeling to the iPhone and make it more useful, as opposed to that when you pull that notification center and it randomly tells you it's going to take 17 minutes to drive to work. But if you're like me and you don't have a job, you really don't know what it's talking about. In terms of design, it's going to stay the same. It's rumored to get the Apple Watch font, which is called San Francisco. It's a font Apple designed specifically to be aesthetically pleasing, but also readable. That's another criticism they face since iOS 7, that their Helvetica new font really wasn't readable. It was attractive, but it made reading certain things difficult, and that's something Apple's trying to fix with bringing San Francisco to iOS 9. So let me get my list back and make sure I talked about everything. Alright, so I think I talked about everything that I needed to talk about, but if I don't move on now, we're going to talk about it for another 7 minutes, and that's not something I want to do. But we're going to move on to Apple Maps. And Apple Maps is something that Apple faced heavy criticism for back when they launched their own mapping service and went away from Google back in iOS 6. It was doing really bad things like putting streets where they didn't exist and having people turn down one-way streets, and it was a really bad experience when it first launched. And it has gotten consistently better, but it isn't perfect, and they're working to make it more perfect by relying less on third parties like TomTom and Yelp to provide data for the application, and they're working on everything in-house. So they have vans driving around getting street pictures to replace pictures from Yelp, and they're just improving their data for iOS 9 and the next version of OS 10, and for everyone who uses Apple Maps. And another thing I want to talk about is OS 10. The current version is Yosemite, and it received an iOS 7-esque treatment last year. It got rid of everything that was skeuomorphic for the most part and replaced it with a flat coat of paint. And although it wasn't as dramatic as it was in iOS 7, it still made enough difference to cause a lot of stability issues in OS 10. And that's another thing that Apple's working on. Like iOS 9, in the next version of OS 10, the main feature is going to be stability. And like iOS 9, it's going to get the San Francisco font. Maybe it'll get a control center to replace some of the menu bar features like we have on iOS. And according to my notes, we might even finally see Siri come, and perhaps Control Center, but we already talked about that. The iPad could see some big changes. We might see an iPad Pro if Apple wants to throw a wildcard out to make this event more interesting. That would be a 12-inch iPad, 3 inches bigger than the current regular iPad and 5 inches bigger than the iPad mini, really to replace laptops. That's what other tablet manufacturers, and especially Microsoft with their Surface, have been focusing on, is laptop replacement. So hopefully Apple has some tricks up its sleeve to make the iPad more competitive. It's no secret that sales have been falling, partially because of the way people upgrade their tablets less frequently than phones, and partially because interest from 2010 has dwindled a little bit with the iPad, as there's so many competitors that are equally capable, and in some cases more capable. So in iOS 9, Apple might introduce some split-screen multitasking and other features to make it more powerful, or that might be specific to the iPad Pro. It's really up in limbo what Apple does. Again, there's not a lot of interesting things happening at WWDC, so Apple might throw this to give everyone a bone and give something to talk about and drool over when the conference is over. We'll probably hear more about Apple's HomeKit service and how they plan to control our lives in every sense. The main aggregator right now is going to be the Apple Watch, and you can shut your lights off and turn your temperature and the house up and everything with your Apple Watch. It's funny because for a device that's so centered on fitness, it's making all these things so we never have to get off the couch to do anything. So 2015, it's a strange place. Finally, I want to talk about Apple's music service. I talked about it a little bit earlier in this video, and it's going to be a direct competitor to Spotify. Apple bought Beats a few years ago, or it was last year, I think it was 2013, they bought Beats. It doesn't really matter when they bought them, the point is they did. They're going to release their own service called Apple Music. It's going to be $10 a month. They wanted to get it cheaper, they were unable to. It's going to be very similar to Spotify and Tidal and all the other music services that exist right now. They'll have a free tier similar to iTunes Music. It's supposedly going to keep the same name, iTunes Music, although I think that's a really bad strategy, but I'm also 18 years old and don't know what I'm talking about, so maybe they do. And that'll have guest DJs like David Guetta, Pharrell, and Drake, who will guest, make playlists, and play music, basically, for this iTunes Music service. That'll be an ad-supported service, and Apple will use that in hopes of luring people over to Apple Music, which is the $10 a month service. There's not a lot to talk about there. It'll function with the new music application found in 8.4, and it's likely going to be launched with 8.4 and not wait for iOS 9. So again, that takes away some more fun from iOS 9, but at least we'll get something in our hands a little bit sooner. At least that's what the rumors say. We might see some improvements to Apple Watch, maybe an API dedicated for developers that will give developers access to the watch's sensors. So Apple Watch apps are more capable and more useful. I wouldn't know about that. I have a Fitbit, the poor man's Apple Watch, but hopefully they make some needed improvements because it's a really cool product, but there are issues with the Apple Watch. In terms of computers, there's no real computers that need a refresh. Again, when Apple wants to make it boring and interesting, they'll usually refresh some computers or announce some new computers. They already did that earlier this year, and no computers really need updating. The only ones that need updating are the Mac Pro and Mac Mini, but those are the two computers that Apple pretends to care about but doesn't actually care about and then forgets about for like a year, and then will throw a random upgrade out. So we really shouldn't expect to see much from that, and there's no control, supply leaks or anything like that. So that was everything I had in my notes. I guess that means the video's done. I will be tweeting about WWDC. You can follow me, twitter.com/ConnorPerrett. The link is in the description and will flash across the screen right now and flash across earlier in the video as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll talk WWDC once it happens, as well as other things right here on Trending Tech. It's a show that I want to do once a week, at least for the foreseeable future, at least until I get too busy, and talk about everything that's been in the past week that trended in the tech world, and then I'll do special editions like the one I'm doing now, and the one I'll do on Monday after Apple's WWDC 2015. But that's all for me now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for sitting through this video. I hope it wasn't horrible, and I hope I can improve. I know I can improve. I'm already improved by the end of the video than I was in the beginning of the video. At least I think I was. You can tell me. Tell me in the comments. All this about is let's talk tech, let's have a discussion. Let me repeat myself again. I'm gonna go before this gets worse. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.